Evo nastavljamo ovo naše druženje na konferenciji i to predavanjem koje će u nastavku održati profesor dr. Stane Božičnik s Fakulteta za graditeljstvo, prometno inženjerstvo i arhitekturu iz Maribora, inače voditelj Centra prometnih ekonomija, a u predmetu interesa i onoga čime se bavi su logistika, transport, transportna ekonomija, međunarodni marketing i inženjerstvo. Profesor dr. Stane Božičnik je sudionik više međunarodnih projekata, a danas će nam nešto govoriti o prednostima i perspektivama sjeverno-jadranskih luka u kontekstu održivog europskog regionalnog razvoja. Profesore Božičnik, izvolite.
Thank you very much. So I'm pleased to see my old friend Carlo Vaghi here and to break through this session. A couple of years ago, I had a presentation at the Bocconi University in Milano, and there were professors, all professors in the first row and PhD students behind. And I asked the audience, what's the difference between the professor of mathematics and professor of logistics? And as usually you don't get the answer. So the answer is the following. Professor of mathematics has written the book 50 years ago and is still valid, no changes. So professor of logistics has to think about that because every year is something new and you have to work very hard in order to be in line with all these changes. So I'm pleased and honored to be here today. I thank you for the invitation. And I would like to make a summary of some of these discussions of yesterday. And I will say also a few of our experiences with the projects and also with the corridor, Baltic-Adriatic corridor. The story is not very clear and very pleasant so far also for Slovenia. Because yesterday there were a lot of discussions about wishes of Croatia to join. And I will tell you the story how problematic was Slovenia to join the Baltic-Adriatic corridor. So what am I have got a few points from Professor Dražen, and he said, okay, key points, ports, corridors, Baltic-Adriatic corridor, and the future. So what do we have to do? I will try to start with some historical events important for the North Adriatic points, make a comparison between northern ports and North Adriatic ports. I will say something about the corridor, in particular Baltic-Adriatic corridor, also Mediterranean corridor is very important. And I will give a few ideas, what do we have to do on the corridor if we want to be successful. The thing is that corridor story is international story, and it is a story of supply chain. And it means that we have to cooperate on all levels if we want to be successful in transport activities. And this cooperation should be coordinated on the whole corridor level. I will show a few experiences, what we are doing on some corridors currently. A few historical events, just to put the North Adriatic ports in a context. After the World War II, the main intercontinental trade was concentrated on transatlantic connections. During the last 2 decades, China and Far East is really getting strong and important. Very important date is the fall of Berlin Wall. And the other very important point is joining of China to World Trade Organization. And 2004, 2013, we have the procedure of joining of European Central European countries to the European Union. So these elements are of really important. And what are the consequences today in Europe? We have growing importance of Far Eastern markets. So it is the fact we are importing almost everything from Far East. We have new regional context and organization and way of thinking in Europe. We have Baltic countries, we have Mediterranean countries, we have Danubian countries, and so on. So there is a attempt to make regional coordination also within the European Union. So, and the consequence are also the corridors, European transnational corridors, and we have appearance of Baltic-Adriatic corridor, Mediterranean, and what we are forgetting and what is very important for Croatia, I'm afraid, I'm sorry that your representative in the European Union is not present today. He did not mention the 10th corridor. It is the corridor going from Germany, Ljubljana, Zagreb towards Turkey. It is unfortunately fallen out of the core corridor network, and this is our common aim, I would say, to put the 10th corridor back to the core corridor structure. It is very important for Slovenia, for Croatia, and for the whole region. And maybe that might be also one of the potential ideas for future conferences, and maybe also the idea for some research projects together, how to put this, the 10th corridor, back into position. What is crucial today? We're talking about CO2 footprint, and of course, environmental awareness is really getting important. And of course, the result of all of these historical changes is growing importance of the North Adriatic ports. So what the Napa ports are, it is clear to everyone, so it is not really important to stress that the common objective of all the ports is to be a multi-port getaway to the dynamic Asian and Central and Eastern European countries. The problem is, and what might be the problem is, which of these ports will gain the priority, because the Far Eastern shippers would like to concentrate, because of economies of scale, I will say something about that, into the shorter number or smaller number of ports also in the North Adriatic area. So cooperation internationally, instead of competition, I do not think that this nice idea will prevail in future. The competition is something very useful, but sometimes also dangerous. So about the advantages of Napa ports, we were talking already yesterday. So the shorter route, about 2,000 nautical miles, and about 8 days of sailing. What is important today is to see that we have in the range of 500 kilometers, 71 million inhabitants, which have an increasing standard of living. An increasing standard of living demands also additional transportation activities. In the range of 700 kilometers, we have 100 million inhabitants, and all of this region can be from the northern ports, northern Adriatic ports, reached within the 12 hours, which is really a great advantage. Of course, in comparison with the northern ports. And if we see also, and we mentioned yesterday also the environmental impact, the transportation of a container from Rijeka or from Koper or from Trieste has a decrease emission of 135 kilograms per TEU, which is per 1 TEU, which is also a great advantage. But if we say, and if we compare the efficiency and the volume of the throughput, we have in northern range ports today 35 million TEU, and in North Adriatic ports 2 million TEU. The thing and the problem which is present today is that northern range ports are serving basically the whole European continent up to the Ukrainian and Russian border. This is now the situation in Europe. And if we would ask ourselves, what is the logical division of the market, we would say northern ports for the northern part of Europe and Napa ports for the central and southern part of Europe. But if we would ask ourselves why the northern European range ports are dominant in spite of less favorable geographical position, we can find three answers in that, for that question. The first is the increase of the average ship size. And the second one is consolidation between linear companies, which are really concentrating the goods and the flows, and the beginning of the story of the shipments starts at the origin. And the problem is that the origin, the shippers from the origin are not willing to divide the cargo for north and south. This is very often the problem. The average growth of the ships during the last decades, we have a tremendous increase of the ships, and 21,000 TEU. Can you imagine what quantity of containers can appear at the port of Rijeka or in the port of Koper with this kind of ship? How can we transport this quantity of containers into mainland? This is the question. Are we in a position, even if all the preconditions would be solved, are we in a position to follow this big demand for transportation into hinterland? So economies of scales are in behind of all of this history. The bigger the ship is, the smaller slot cost we have. And we have compensation. Cheaper transport costs to the northern range ports, and with some additional costs for transportation on the mainland. This is now the economic question for future. How can we survive in this market, providing that we take into consideration the decreasing costs of the shipment with the biggest and bigger vessels which we are facing today. Advantage number two of the northern ports is better hinterland transport. Block trains are running on a very efficient way. The quantity and quality of services is on a high level. We have deep sea in the ports, in the northern ports, and of course, large trains for hinterland transport are every day available. Unfortunately, not in our ports. So these are the main reasons why northern ports are more efficient today. But we are doing a good job in North Adriatic ports. If we compare I'm concentrating on containers because containers are the crucial or very important cargo for the corridors. And in 10 years, from 2006 to 2016, we have increased throughput in northern ports for almost 250%, which is really a great achievement. And if we would ask ourselves why it is so, we have a fast development of economies in Central Europe. The deep sea imports in Central Europe and in Southeast Europe, you see, the darker the country is, the bigger is the growth. The southeastern and Central European countries are growing much, much faster than the Western ones. And the same situation we have with the deep sea exports growth, the same situation. So the market is developing, the demand is growing, and this is also the reason why the Napa ports are so successful during the last 10 years. 250%, it is quite an achievement. So if we follow the European container port demand model, they predict development from 2012 versus 2030, great growth rates in Central Europe. They predict that the impact of the northern range ports will be smaller in 2030, and that this Central European area will be better served through the North Adriatic ports. The predictions and the estimations for the by the port demand model show that, as it was mentioned also yesterday, 6 million TEU by 2030 is expected throughput in North Adriatic ports. If we are today on 2 million tons, it means we have to, in the next 10, 13 years, accommodate another 4 million tons, if these estimations are true. And on the other side, the Napa market share would, according to the study, increase from 5 to 11%. And on the other side, the growth rate for the North ports is estimated only for 42%. But do not forget, 42% on 40 million, it is still something. It is another 20 million tons. So it is also an element to think about. So if we go now to the regional development, corridors and ports are crucial for development of the regions. So the high quality transport infrastructure it means ports and hinterland connections, is needed for this growth. And today, more important on the corridors, interconnectivity and interoperability, especially on the borders, is of crucial importance. And on the other side, we have heard the presentations today in the morning, supply chain management. So we have supply chains. We have heard a presentation yesterday from the Polish colleagues. They are concentrating on food market and supply chain. So we have real challenge of different supply chains of different source on the corridors. So this is the challenge, and this challenge requires collaboration and networking between all the relevant partners. So cooperation in all areas, in all fields. This is the must in future. So if Napa ports want to reach that 6 million, so required competitiveness in terms of quantity and quality of transport infrastructure is must, and of course the increase of level of service in port and transportation services is also a must. So in Baltic, for the hinterland connections from the ports, crucial are corridors. We have mentioned also already yesterday the Baltic, Adriatic, and the Mediterranean corridor. And now the story about the Baltic-Adriatic corridor in Slovenia. Something like 15 years ago, the project of the Commission was okay. The project of the Commission was that this is the corridor without this link, and Slovenian politicians didn't intervene. I was invited by, it was the governor of the Austrian region Carinthia, Mr. Haider. And Mr. Haider has invited Ferrero Waldner, who was the foreign minister of the European Union, Mr. Barroso, and all commission was there. And I was invited from Slovenia to take part and to support Baltic-Adriatic corridor, which would exclude Slovenia. They have offered me 500,000 euro research money for participation, and I have refused it. I went to the minister and said, listen, something is going on. This is not in favor of Slovenia. The politicians didn't act. You know who did act? The young experts from the port of Koper. They have started activities in order to succeed in a year and to add this part to the Baltic-Adriatic corridor. Another sad story, in Graz was built in Werndorf a logistics center. And the Austrians wanted to build this logistics center in Maribor or in Pragersko to serve also the Hungarian market together with us. Slovenia didn't react, and when this logistics center in Graz was built, the Slovenian politicians said, yes, we have to have also a logistics center, but unfortunately, no goods. So there is always, very often, a big mismatch between the needs of the activities in some other political fields. What we're doing now is we are partner to the Baltic-Adriatic corridor study. So there's an ex-minister for transportation of Germany. He's he is responsible for. The concept of commission is that you have one responsible person for each corridor. And what are we doing now is we are assessing every single kilometer of the rail infrastructure to see the situation as it is, the quality of the infrastructure, because in the past, the countries were reporting that everything is good on the corridor. Yes, we will do that in future. And Commission doesn't believe anymore. So we have got a good continuous business for the Commission, direct contract, and we are assessing every single kilometer, not only the bottlenecks, but also investment projects, list of projects, dates of beginning, dates of end, and the last question is, are financial means already available? So this is the work we do on the corridors. And if we see now the Baltic corridors in figures, we had made a couple of years ago an estimation about the throughput on the Baltic Adriatic corridor. And we have found that about 70% of all transport is still provided on roads, 30% on the rail. And one interesting figure, only 28% of the all traded goods for the countries on the corridor are transported through the ports of the corridor. So it means that out of 530 million tons which are transported on the corridor, only 28% are coming through the Baltic Adriatic ports. It means all the rest is coming through the northern range ports in general. So there is a great potential also for our colleagues in Baltic part of the corridor and also for the North Adriatic ports. On the other side, we have white paper, and white paper says that we have to reach 50% of transport on the corridors by rail, and so we have to move if we want to achieve the requirements of the white paper. We have basically three crucial factors which we have to take into consideration. Technology, so we have constant development of new intermodal technological solutions. And today we have heard a lot of ITC and information technologies which are being developed. And if we want to be competitive on the North Adriatic ports, we have to take these technological challenges really as serious challenge. Optimal flow of goods through the corridor. I will show you what we are doing now on some corridors in Europe about this optimal flow of goods. And of course, last but not the least, optimal measures to support sustainable combined transport. This is of crucial importance. I don't think we need to say something about technology. We can talk about new technological challenges for hours, but what is important? If Austria or Germany develops a new Nikrasa for loading and unloading of non-craneable trucks, we have to do it also in Slovenia and also in Croatia and also in Czech Republic and also in Poland. This is important. So we have to think from the aspect of the corridor. And this is, as I said already, challenge for all of us. Cooperation is must today if we want to be successful. In the logistics political measures, we have push measures, which are discouraging road transport. For example, road user charges are a case of this, and pull measures, which is financial support for the users of the combined transport. We have just completed analysis of the pull and push measures in Europe, in the Alpine space, and we have seen how successful can pull and push measures be in practice. Switzerland is making a good combination between pull and push measures, and the analysis of the transport flows from Switzerland to Italy has shown that 70% of the whole transport is provided by rail because of this good combination of pull and push measures. On the other side, France has not applied these measures, and the result is 90% of transport is still provided to Italy by trucks. What we're doing on this, the new challenges on the corridor is measurement of time and measurement of cost elements and assessments of interoperability and interconnectivity of transport infrastructure and transport services. So for those who are interested in, this is Baltic Adriatic TEN-T core network study, which we're doing, and Alpino Sete, which is right now in finalization. What do? We basically, just a short explanation. We crucial thing, which is very often neglected, is first mile and last mile delivery. It is very often 50% or even more of cost of the whole transport. So we study all the activities in terms of time for cargo handlings, documents, waiting time for transport and shipments, time for interoperability processes, and we measure how do we transport from one terminal to the other, what is the value of operations on each terminal, and what are the reasons for shorter or longer transport time in between the corridors. And the same we do also in terms of costs. On this way, we will evaluate two great corridors in Europe. So we have to conclude little by little. So we can say that Far East Europe deep sea container shipping route via Suez Canal is expected to dominate also in future. In general, yes. On the other side, we have to say that the growth rates in China are getting moderate. They have fallen from 15% to 7%. And on the other side, we have also a lot of industries in Europe starting again to produce some components by themselves. So the majority will remain. The question is how fast these changes will be in future, in the next decades. If we see Austria, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Poland, and so on, so the Central and Southeast European countries will grow faster than average in Europe by 2030. This is the fact. And of course, the importance of Napa ports is also expected to grow because of the economic regions, it means the shorter transport to the hinterland, because environmental reasons, and because of constant improvement of infrastructure in ports and the corridors. We have heard yesterday about the progress in the port of Rijeka. We have progress in a lot of investments in the port of Trieste, also some plans in copper and so on. So this is, of course, the fact. So if we want to accommodate 6 million tons by 2030, it means that it is a necessity to have deep water, to have improved rail freight. We have heard yesterday about the problems with the rail freight, and we have also improved the quality of the services. We have to focus on the entire supply chain, and not only for the transport from one terminal to the other, but from door to door. This is must, and this is the challenge for all of us in future, and this demand will be more and more severe in future. What is happening? I know that there are some. The threat is that some Far Eastern partners will try to concentrate or more concentrate on one of the Napa ports in future. If this is the case, this is also the threat for the others. And but on the other side, we have to be happy that there is a great potential in Baltic-Adriatic corridor countries, because only 28% of the corridor transport demand comes and is served through the corridor ports. We have also mentioned that sustainable intermodal transport needs an efficient combination of pull and push measures. The innovative technologies of all respect in intermodal transport are necessity, and monitoring and improving the processes on the corridors in terms of cost and time are basically the must. So I'm willing to answer to all your questions. Thank you very much for your attention.